Welcome to Real Rover. I'm your roving host, John Craig. Real Rover へようこそ。クレイグ・ジョンでございます。Introducing you to people you would never have heard of if it wasn't for Real Rover. Here we go.
Yeah.
Real Rover would like to welcome its listeners to Schumacher College here in the countryside of Devon. And my guest today is Satish Kumar, who, rather than tell you about him at the beginning, I would like you to hear the entire interview to find out about Satish Kumar. In fact, I would like you to get a glimpse of his entire life. So Satish, welcome to Real Rover. What have you got to do with the existence of Schumacher College? Let's start right there.
Schumacher College emerged out of the crisis in education. At the moment, all our universities, thousands of them, are educating young people, more or less you can say, with a single aim of getting them into the market, into the job market.
Into the job market, yes.
Yeah. And from the very high school, the career advisors go and meet the young children. And then they go, the career advisors, into universities and meet the young students. And all the education is to get a job. And when you get a job is mostly for money and not for creativity, not for the service of humanity, not for imagination, not for discovering who you are. And so I said, this education is only limited to jobs. I want education which is more holistic, which helps you to discover yourself and your abilities, your capabilities, your potential, who you are, and how you can make a great contribution in the service of the planet Earth and in the service of your humanity. And so that was the impetus. And then I met the trustees of Dartington Hall, and they had this empty building which used to be a secondary school called Dartington Hall School.
This used to be a secondary school. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Dartington Hall School.
Ah.
And it was empty because school closed because they could not run it economically. And the students stopped coming. And so it became empty. School was closed. And I said to the trustees that you've got empty buildings, 40 bedrooms. Let us start
40 bedrooms have you.
40 bedrooms. And let us start a small, experimental, avant-garde educational project to study not for jobs, but for living. And create livelihood out of your education. But also develop your mind, your spirit, your heart, your, I say, education of head, education of heart, and education of hands. Education of whole body, education of whole spirit. And so, and at the moment also, world is facing many crises apart from educational crisis. There's environmental crisis. And so I said we should have a college which addresses these issues of our time, such as environmental crisis, and how we can create a sustainable, ecologically balanced and a humanity which is at ease with itself, but also can live in harmony with the natural world. And so with that vision, we created Schumacher College. And we named it after E.F. Schumacher, who was the author of Small is Beautiful. And he wrote a very great essay called Buddhist Economics. So he was the first Western economist to put those two words together, Buddhist economics. And so we said, this is a perfect combination. We want spirituality for inner world and economy for the outer world. So when economy and spirituality come together, when economy and ecology come together, then we have a holistic education. So we named the college after E.F. Schumacher, and small is beautiful. And so it started in 1991, January, and we have been here since then, so nearly 28 years, and it has attracted students from all over the world. We have students here from 90 different countries, and 15,000 students have come through this college. And in this college, we have two types of programs. One is long-term, and the other is short courses. So long-term courses are 1 year or 6 months. So if you are 1 year here, then you can get a master's degree in holistic science, in holistic economics, in ecological design, in ecology and spirituality. These are the themes we explore at a master's degree level. Then there are 6 months program, which is more about practical, hands-on gardening, particularly growing food and where our food is coming from, touching the soil and knowing the quality of the soil, knowing the quality of the plants, the life of plants and all that. So there's a 6 months program. And then we have a short courses which sometimes last for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, sometimes even 1 week. And occasionally we have even weekend courses. And those courses are for everybody. They can come and study and learn. The most important thing about Schumacher College is that it is a community. You are learning by living in a community. And as a community, all the students are participating in cooking, in cleaning, in washing up, in gardening, in all the domestic activities so that they feel at home. They feel part of a community. So learning in a community, but spiritual based, however, embracing the ecological and social world. So social justice, ecological sustainability, and spirituality, all those come together at Schumacher College.
Wow. Well, I think for many of our listeners, they're going to be, in a sense, stunned to hear that, because those are very lofty goals and very worthy goals in the world today, which more and more people are beginning to see as coming apart at the seams, if I could use that term. In 28 years, let's just stick to Schumacher right now, because that's where we are in the college. In 28 years, 15,000 students have passed through. What kind of impact has that had locally in Britain and abroad? Can you tell us maybe what some of the students have achieved through learning here?
Yes. When students leave Schumacher College, I give them my final message. I say to them that now, after 1 year studying here, you go in the world, out there, but don't look for a job. Go out and create your own job. And that job should be ecologically sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just. If your job has these 3 qualities, that you are happy doing it, so spiritually fulfilling, but you are not exploiting people, should be socially just, and you are also not impacting the environment negatively. So no waste, no pollution, no contamination of water, air, soil, rivers, oceans with plastic. So go and create your own jobs. So now, in addition to that, these people are also leaders. We are training at least 100 students a year as the future leaders who go out in the world and engage with social change, ecological sustainable movement, and spiritual regeneration. And so they are leaders. So these people are now creating new jobs. Some people have started holistic food restaurants. Some people have started new gardens. Some people have started ecological and holistic bookshops. Some people are starting and working with great organizations like the United Nations, climate change, the Paris Conference on climate change. Two of our students were behind the scene, most important workers.
Is that right?
in there. Then there are many other students who are working with great NGOs, non-governmental organizations, such as WWF or Friends of the Earth or Greenpeace. So from UN to Friends of the Earth to businesses, but they are all engaging themselves in something ecologically sustainable, socially just, spiritually fulfilling. These are the three criteria I say to them. And I can see many, many examples. But also these people start educational activities in their own country. So some of our students have gone back to Brazil because they came from Brazil, and they have started Escola Schumacher in Brazil.
Escola Schumacher in Brazil, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's a wonderful initiative. In the same way now, we are working with our alumni, Schumacher worldwide. And some of them are in Bhutan, and they are working with the Gross National Happiness Project. There are some in China, and they are working with Ecological Civilization Project. There are some in India, and they are working for organic farming with Vandana Shiva. There are some of them in Africa, in South Africa. So all over the world, these students are creating new initiatives to bring about a kind of education that we have created at Schumacher College.
I can't think of anywhere else in the world right now, off the top of my head, that is anywhere near that level of visionary education. Unfortunately, we really need Schumacher College at least in every country of the world.
Actually, in Japan,
yes,
there are lots of our alumni, and lots of Japanese students come here, and they go back, and they are starting a lot of good projects. And so in Japan too, like in China, India, Brazil, also in Japan, we have Schumacher alumni.
So you must feel very, in a sense, fulfilled that for someone born in India who at the age of, I believe, 9, decided I'm going to become a monk. Now in the English countryside, listening to the birds, and on the 1st of June, could you have possibly imagined that anything like this would happen? Obviously no, because you wanted to be a monk for life. So let's take listeners who know nothing of your past back to that moment in India where you made that unbelievable decision. I mean, I'm thinking of a 9-year-old child in Britain or in Japan, how they live and what they do, actually deciding I'm going to become a Jain monk. It's very hard to compute. So could you take us back in time and try to relive that moment, what you were feeling, where you were, and why you made that enormous decision?
The story begins a little earlier. When I was 4 years old, my father died. And I saw him lying in state, not moving, not talking, not walking, and all my family crying. My mother crying, my sisters crying, my uncles and aunts crying, my brothers crying, and I was 4 years old. And so that was one of the big shock, the first shock of my life, that I see my father dead and my family, particularly my mother and sisters, in great sorrow and crying. And so I said to my mother, why are you crying? Why father is not walking? Why he's not talking? Why he's not moving? And my mother simply says, your father is dead. And I didn't know what dead means.
Of course not.
So I said, what do you mean? When you die, what happens? Everybody stops moving and other people start crying? Yes, everybody will die, she said. Mother, will you die? Yes. Wow, that was terrible news. And I will die? I asked. Yes, you will die too. That was terrible news. One day I will be like my father, not moving, not walking, not talking, and everybody crying. So that was the kind of seed of the sorrow, the shock, the amazement almost, that what the world is. How can we stop people dying so that other people don't have to cry? That was the beginning. And then after 4 years, up to 9 years, for 5 years, this was going over and over again and again in my mind. What can we do to stop people dying? And during this time, I met Jain monks. And I was asking this question, anybody and everybody. And so I asked this question to these Jain monks. And I said, can you tell me, is there a way to stop people dying? Now there is a belief in the Jain tradition, also in Buddhist tradition, that this cycle of birth and death can end if you release your spirit and soul from your past karmas, past bondage of attachment, of greed, of anger, of fear, of illusion. And so he said, the monk said to me, yes, you can bring an end to the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the world and trying to purify your soul.
Yeah.
Purify your soul and be free of your karmas, free of your bondage of attachment and greed and fear. And so that was very attractive idea, because I want to do something, anything, to stop death. And so I said to my mother, I want to become a monk. And I said to these monks, please make me a monk. And my mother was very shocked. She said, I can't leave you, you are 9 years old, I can't let you go. I said, mother, I don't want to stay at home. I was very inspired, even at the age of 9. And so that is how I, in the end, persuaded my mother and the family to let me go. And I persuaded the monks to allow me to join them and become a Jain monk.
What an enormous decision. And what a sensitive soul for 5 years to hold that dilemma in your mind, really searching for the answer. I think many adults today forget just how aware children are. They overlook this profound sensitivity and questioning and think, well, they're just kids, they don't understand that. How could they possibly understand that? But from the perspective of Jainism or Buddhism, we're all born into this world as spiritual beings, as souls, probably with previous understanding and knowledge.
Previous many lives.
We
lives. Carry the memory and the intelligence and the genes in our cells of past lives' memory. So sometimes it is we call the old soul in a new body.
It sounds like you are an old soul in a new body.
Yes.
And so for 5 years you wanted to get the answer. Jainism seemed to provide the answer. You actually formally became a monk. So there you are. Where are you at this point when you become a monk?
At this point, I am in a province of India, a state of India called Rajasthan. I was born in Rajasthan, and the monks, traveling monks, wandering monks, came through my village, and so I met them, and then I followed them, and then they came again, and they were our guru. They were our family religion. So my mother was always a follower of Jain monks. And so they were our gurus, and so we were in touch with them. So in Rajasthan, I became a monk. And then as a monk, now I'm walking bare feet with a begging bowl. Because like Buddhist monks, you are not allowed to farm or work in a factory or in an office. You are full-time meditator and a seeker of truth and spirituality and liberation and enlightenment. So full time, barefoot walking with a begging bowl and going from village to village, town to town. So there's no fixed monastery for Jain monks. It's a wandering monkhood, a kind of mendicant, wandering monkhood. And so for 9 years, I practiced meditation, detachment, how to deal with your inner enemies, such as anger. And when you are angry, you have to be aware of the state of your mind. Say, I am angry. Why am I angry? This anger will torture my soul and bind me to the world, because I am angry because of my attachment. I'm angry because my expectations are not met. And so I am attached to my expectations. So being free of expectations and accepting the world as it is, without anger and without fear. So for 9 years, my seeking was to be free of anger, fear, greed, attachment. These were the practices. And through meditation and through awareness and through learning to be aware of the state of your mind and your spirit and your feelings. And so self-assessment, self-critique, and self-realization.
These are incredibly powerful concepts, but I'm thinking, here's a 13-year-old boy, his hormones are starting to work. Everything in his physiology is saying, get the girls, have babies, be successful. This is the program that's inputted into your biological DNA. And these concepts sound like, for most people out there, well, that's all very well if you're a 70-year-old philosopher thinking about detachment and being aware of your emotions, but really, can you do that at that age? I mean, that sounds near impossible. How difficult was it for you to actually practice this on a daily basis?
Yeah, it was not easy. As you say, as a teenager, all the emotions and biological demands start to bother you. But when you are in the atmosphere, surrounded by other monks and teachings, from the morning to the evening, you are following a discipline.
This is important.
Yeah, and in that discipline of study, begging, sharing, teaching, learning, whole day is a disciplined day. And within that discipline, you grow and you learn and you move and you flow. But within that discipline, like the two banks of a river, so river cannot be allowed to become a flood, or even if it turns around, meanders around, still it remains within the two banks. And so I was growing as a teenage boy in that discipline. And in India, there is a strong tradition of young people joining the spiritual path and walking on spiritual path. And so it is not like the Western countries or the modern industrialized secular countries where everybody is encouraged to become consumer or earn money or be entertained or whatever. In India, there is a kind of strong tradition of discipline to practice spirituality from a very young age. And so I was fortunate to have that atmosphere and that culture and that surrounding so that I could grow spiritually in that tradition until I was 18 years old.
There's also the tradition I've heard of the 4 lives, where you have 4 sections of your life.
Yes.
The first life, I believe, is the life that takes you through your schooling or your childhood. Is that correct? The first life?
There are 4 ashrams, we call them.
The 4 ashrams.
4 ashrams, 4 stages of life. So the first stage is up to 25 years.
Oh, it's up to 25.
Up to 25. And that 25 years first stage is a stage of learning about the world, learning about yourself, learning about your relationship with the world. And so it's acquiring knowledge and experience together. Only knowledge is not enough. You have to learn and acquire knowledge through experience. So 25 years of that stage is the first stage. So in that time, you learn to build a house, you learn to grow food, you learn to some practical skills, so that you are learning head, heart and hands already. Then the second stage is you put what you have learned into practice as a householder. So that's another 25 years. So from 25 to 50, second stage of life. That is also an ashram. So what you have learned, the skills and you have experienced, now you can make a family, you can have a wife, you can have a business, you can have a husband, you can have children. You bring what you have learned in first stage of life, first ashram of life, into reality, into manifestation. And then that was still a kind of self-expanding into a family. But when you are 50, that is the time to move even further. That's called vanaprastha. Connect with nature, connect with the earth, and connect with the society at large. And so you bring your teaching, your poetry, your books, your whatever you can contribute to the world. So from 50 to 75 is the time when what you have gained in first stage and experienced, and then the gain in second stage, now you contribute to the world and to nature and to the environment and to the society in the third stage. And then when you are 75, then you have done your personal development, then your family development, then your service to society. Now it is a time to retreat and meditate and prepare yourself for death. So that's the final stage. Prepare yourself for the next world, next life, so that you are not dying with all the kind of responsibilities of attachment and a family and the worldly desires and always money and buildings and houses and cars and all those. So you leave all those behind and find a quiet place in an ashram or in a community where you can be free of worldly responsibilities and attachments and seek your new life, prepare for your death and embrace the death and move into new life. So that is the 4 stages of Hindu philosophy.
That's the first time I've heard it elucidated so clearly. But you turned that all upside down. You were into the stage 4 when you were 9. You rebelled against the system in a sense. However, you have, as far as I can see, fulfilled all of the 4 stages. You're now 81. You're now 81, but you started with 4. Literally, you started with 4. But that interests me because you have a long history of the 4 ashrams. You were doing it in a different order, and something came along to, in a sense, shift you back into the correct order. What was that?
I mean, the thing is that this order is a normal, regular pattern of life. But there are exceptions.
You are one.
And I am one of them. So I, at age 18, decided to renounce my renunciation.
Oh, a good one. Renounce your
and
renunciation.
renounce the monkhood. And I felt that now that fear of death and worry about death is gone. Now I want to embrace the world. And what I have learned in my monkhood, and I was grateful to all the teachings that I learned as a monk. What I have learned about spirituality and being free of anger and fear and greed and illusions and attachment, I have to bring that in the world and practice spirituality while living an ordinary life, everyday life. Because how many people can become a monk? Only few. But spirituality should not be for a small elite of monks. Spirituality should be common to everybody. It should be available to ordinary human being everywhere, every person. Because everybody has a spirit in their body and body in their spirit. And so I decided to make a big step, a more radical and a more rebellious step. And I rebelled against the organized religious order, although I was grateful to have learned so much, but still I wanted to be out of this confinement and come in the world and practice spirituality with the right motivation in my heart. So whatever I do in the service of humanity, in the service of the planet Earth, and therefore it is not selfish, it is not out of greed, it's not out of attachment, but it is out of a sense of service and a kind of, you can say, an offering. And so from age 18, I came out, but I still practice spirituality, but in a world. And I joined a Gandhian movement. Mahatma Gandhi was a supreme example of combining spirituality with politics, spirituality with economics, spirituality with daily life in the world. And so for me, Mahatma Gandhi became the symbol of inspiration, a beacon of light. And I followed his teachings and lived in an ashram started by a Gandhian leader called Vinoba Bhave. And that was a very good experience for me. And then I met Vinoba Bhave, and he was a great Gandhian. And he was very spiritual as well as social. He was saying that as India gained independence politically from the British through non-violent means, we should make India independent and free economically, and all Indian peasants and workers and farmers and poor people, they should all be able to live a good life without exploitation, without subjugation, without exploiting nature and without exploiting people. We should create a new kind of economy. And that was called land gift movement, because he said that if all Indians who are working on the land has access to land and can own some land, not ownership own, but relationship with land, then poverty can be eliminated. And so Vinoba was walking from village to village all over India. He walked 100,000 miles from north to south, from east to west, all across India. And I joined him and walked with him and persuaded many landlords to give land for the poor. And so this way eliminating poverty, and so there should be nobody poor and nobody rich. Everybody is a human being. We don't have to have these labels that you are rich and you are poor, and this is a division between the rich and the poor. We should all live like human beings, no label of being rich or no label of being poor. And so this is a kind of vision I joined. And that was a wonderful learning experience for me as well, because from 18 to 25, 26, I worked with Vinoba and learned how to bring spirituality and good values of non-violence and peace and justice and beauty into the world.
So at this point in your life, you're living in India. Your native language at this point is what?
Hindi.
You're speaking Hindi. Were you fluent in English at that point?
No.
Did you speak any English at that point?
No English.
Absolutely no English.
Absolutely no English. I did not go to school.
Oh, of course.
So because I was a monk. As a monk, you only learn your native language and your scriptural language, which is Sanskrit. So I learned Sanskrit. And I also learned some other ancient languages of India called Pali.
Pali, of course.
Or Prakrit. So, but no English, no foreign language, only Indian language, but mainly Hindi.
So when you're with Vinoba Bhave, you're living in an ashram, you're living in what kind of accommodation? What's your daily life like?
A daily life in the ashram, there were two kinds of daily life. When I'm in the ashram, I am getting up at 4 a.m. and first 1 hour is meditation. So in a way, my spiritual monk life continued in that form. So from 4 to 5, we have meditation. Then from 5, we have wash and prepare and ready, and maybe 6 o'clock have some breakfast, and then we go and work on the land, in the garden. So from 6 to about 10. Because then in India, you know, it gets very hot.
It's very hot.
So in morning time, when it's cool, we work on the land. So at the ashram, I would learn how to grow food and how to prepare the bed, how to water the plants and seeds, and all that I learned about growing food and about plants. And then from 10 to 11, 12, we will do some craft indoor. So it's a cooler indoor. So we'll learn spinning, weaving, carpentry, whatever skill you want to learn. Because Gandhian ashrams are very much about growing and craftsmanship and food. And you should be self-reliant. You should not be a consumer. Everything should be made by factory. Mahatma Gandhi's slogan was not mass production, but production by the masses. So if you are eating food, you should participate in growing food, in cooking food. If you are wearing clothes, you should participate in spinning and weaving. You are living in a house, you should participate in building the house. Everybody should participate in something, even if you don't are doing everything. You don't have to do that. You also grow food and make clothes and build house and make shoes. Not everything, but you can exchange with your neighbors and friends. So somebody can build a house, somebody can make shoes, somebody can make clothes, you can grow food, you can share. So that way, everybody is a maker, not just a consumer. You consume only after you have contributed in making. And so that was Gandhian principle. So my discipline was that from 10 to 12, we will do some kind of manual skill or craft. And then, of course, we will prepare lunch, and then we have a lunch, and then we have some rest, because in India, being very hot, it's very important to have a siesta.
Very important to have a siesta,
yeah, there's some rest. And then in the afternoon, when it gets cooler, then we can go again in the garden and grow food and look after plants. And then again, we can do some study. So in Gandhian ashrams, we always had at least 1 to 2 hours minimum to study Gandhian philosophy. We read Tolstoy, we read poetry. So I learned quite a lot, because the study period is in the afternoon. And then in the evening again, we have prayers. So evening prayer is very important. All ashramites come together and we have a devotional time. Mahatma Gandhi was very keen on evening prayer. And then after prayer, we have some spiritual discourse. And then in the evening meal, we prepare, we cook together, evening meal, and then we have meal, and then we go to bed by 9 o'clock. So that was the discipline of the day.
What you described earlier in our talk about how you created Schumacher College, the principles upon which it is based, the results of people moving back to their own countries and starting something that is sustainable, I mean sanely sustainable, and provide something for society. The head, hands and heart idea. I mean, it makes so much sense. And what you've just described as a day in your life, in your 20s, for, I would say, the majority of humanity right now is close to incomprehensible. And yet it is so entirely sane. You're learning how to grow, you're learning how to make, and then you're learning how to think, but also then how to give thanks. With the ceremony. It's the most perfectly rounded day I can imagine. But again, you know, there are young people now who are brought up in Western society and decide, I'm going to get rid of the materialist paradigm. I'm going to go and join an Indian ashram. And there are many horror stories of these kind of people going into an ashram and trying to do what you actually did. But very, very few of them can do that. Why is this?
Because these young people have been brought up in a conditioned mind by their family, by their schooling, and they don't feel at ease with using their hands, using their body, making something. They think, oh, I want to earn money, I want to become famous, I want to become successful. Whereas I was, and many young Indians are trained and educated, not looking for success, but looking for fulfillment, for well-being, for happiness. Success and happiness don't necessarily go together. People are always hankering for success, and therefore whatever they have, they are never contented. They want more and more. Because success, there is no limit to success. You can be prime minister and still you are not enough successful. You can be president and you are not. You can be CEO of a big company, still you are not successful enough. So there is no contentment. There is no limit. Whereas I was educated and trained as a monk and then in the Gandhian ashram to learn to be contented and celebrate what you have and not hanker and crave for what you don't have. I mean, that way I was able to be at ease with myself. And I'm not interested in name, fame, money, status, power, success. Those are not my goals in life. My goal is to be happy, to be contented, to be creative, to be imaginative, and to serve the earth, to serve the humanity. And in order to do that, I can write books, I can give talks, I can do garden, but without any desire for any particular success or results or outcome. I don't seek anything of that kind. I just give for the sake of giving and receive with gratitude. Because I'm receiving so much. I'm receiving from my ancestors, from my teachers, from nature, from my parents, from everybody. I'm receiving so much. So in return, I give something with the sense of service and not on any desire for achievement or success. And this is why I was happy in ashram. Whereas the young people you are talking about, going either from the Western countries or from countries like Japan to India or to Vietnam or to some other countries, they are also seeking something like an object. Whereas my training is not seeking an object, but being yourself. And out of being, everything else will grow.
That's amazing advice. And in a sense, it helps people who are listening to understand how you were able to create such a quote-unquote successful educational experiment here at Schumacher College, where the whole being receives that education and then gives it back to the world. Now let's move to the 25 to 50.
Yeah.
Because we want to cover your whole life here for the benefit of listeners. Everybody who knows your work understands that you went on an epic journey after this period of time in the ashram, where you walked from India all the way to where we are now. So could you briefly summarize the reason you undertook, first of all, the departure from that wonderful life in the ashram? That's a beautiful life. Why would you want to leave that? There's a whole life waiting there of activity and learning.
Yeah.
And you're not after anything in success terms, but you left on the traditional hero's journey. What was it that stopped that and started the walk?
There was a turning point in my life. I was living in a Gandhian ashram, and with a friend I was talking, and I heard and read about the peace movement in the West, and in particular peace movement in Britain, and even more particular the movement led by Bertrand Russell. Lord Bertrand Russell, the Nobel Prize winning philosopher, mathematician. And he was protesting against the nuclear weapons, because he said nuclear weapons are so lethal that even by accident, if they explode, the world will be facing a great disaster. And so he went to protest against the bomb, and he went in London to protest in front of the government buildings, defense ministry, and there the police said, you have to move. And so he said, no, we will not move until the British government declares a ban on the bomb. So he was arrested. And then the courts said that one, you have to pay a fine, and the second, you have to give a promise that for 1 year you will not make any other demonstration like this. Then we will release you. And Bertrand Russell refused to sign that declaration, and pay a fine. And so he was put in jail. I read this news that 90 years old Bertrand Russell, Lord Bertrand Russell, Nobel Prize winning philosopher, is in jail. So I said to my friend, that was a turning point. And I said to my friend, look here, there's a man of 90 going to jail for peace in the world. What are we doing, young man, sitting here drinking coffee? So we must do something. So that turning point made my friend and I to take a decision to leave the monastery, which was another kind of monastery, ashram. Second monastery, I call it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, the second monastery.
Yeah, second monastery, the ashram. Leave. So there's a second leaving, and walk to Moscow, Paris, London, and Washington DC. The 4 nuclear capitals at that time. So that when we walk, like Vinoba was walking, so we learned from Vinoba how to walk. And I was walking as a monk, so I knew how to walk. So when you are walking for peace, you are putting your body online. And you are not only talking to politicians about peace, but you are talking to ordinary people along the way. And so that was the decision my friend and I took. And we started our journey without any money in our pockets, because we took a blessing from Vinoba, our teacher, and Vinoba Bhave said that if you are going for peace in the world, peace begins in trust. Wars begin in fear. How do you demonstrate that you trust? You are at peace and you are being peace. The way to demonstrate that you are trusting the world is to go without any money and trust that the world will feed you, look after you. And so that was a great advice. And so we took no money with us because he was a guru, he was our teacher, and we had to take his advice. So we started from the grave of Mahatma Gandhi in New Delhi, and we started to walk from India. We walked in India, and then from India to Pakistan, 1 month in Pakistan, then we came to Afghanistan, and then 55 days in Afghanistan. Then we walked through Iran, the deserts of Iran, for 100 days. And then we walked in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, and in Georgia. And in Georgia, we were distributing our leaflets and talking to people. And we met 2 young ladies in front of a tea factory. They were having a lunch break. They were outside their tea factory, standing in the sun and enjoying. And when we started to talk to them, they said, how have you come from India without any money? Who feeds you? How do you eat? So I said that people feed us and people offer us food. So I said, are you hungry? This is lunchtime. We have a very nice canteen in our factory. Would you like to have some tea and some bread and some food? You have come all the way from India. Tell us your story. So we said, yes. So we came in. We said, any time is tea time. It's a good offer. And so we came in. And we sat down around the table. And the ladies brought us tea and bread and cheese and jam and nice food. And as we were eating and talking, one of the lady had a brainwave. She went out of the room and came back with 4 packets of tea. And she said to us, this is not for you. But for whom is it? She said, these are packets of peace tea. And I would like you to be my messenger and deliver 1 packet of peace tea to our premier in the Kremlin, 2nd packet of peace tea to the President of France in Palace Élysée, 3rd packet of peace tea to the Prime Minister of England in 10 Downing Street, and 4th packet of tea, please deliver to the President of the United States of America in the White House. And please give them a message from me. Because you are going, I can't go. I'm an ordinary tea packer in this factory. I can't go to Moscow, Paris, London, Washington. But you say you are going. So please give them a message for me. Give them a tea packet of peace tea and say to them that if you ever get a mad thought of pressing the nuclear button, please stop for a moment and have a fresh cup of tea.
Ah, great idea.
And that will give you a moment to reflect and think that your bombs will not only kill your enemy, armies and military and air force and the navy, but those bombs will kill all living beings, humans, men, women, children, ordinary people, civilians, but also animals and forests and lakes and oceans were contaminated. So please don't use nuclear weapons. That was such a powerful message. We became the messengers of these two women, and we delivered the packets of peace tea in the Kremlin. And we tried to deliver the packet of peace tea in Palace Élysée, but there President de Gaulle was at that time president, and he refused to meet us. And so we protested. We were also arrested, like Bertrand Russell. For a short time, for 3 days, we were put in jail. But in the end, we delivered that packet of peace tea to the chief of the police and said, please, you be our messenger now and deliver it to the president. And then we went to London and we were received by the British government, and we delivered the third packet in London. And then we met Bertrand Russell.
Oh, you did?
Yes, we met Bertrand Russell. And he helped us, and many other peace activists helped us. And so we got 2 tickets in a boat called Queen Mary, and we sailed across the Atlantic and we came to New York, and from New York we walked to Washington DC, and we delivered the 4th packet of tea in the White House. And then we ended our journey at the grave of John F. Kennedy. So we started from the grave of Mahatma Gandhi and we ended at the grave of John F. Kennedy. So from grave to grave, we were making the point that if you trust in the gun, a gun can kill a Gandhi, a gun can kill a Kennedy, and therefore don't use the gun, don't use the bombs, don't use the weapons. Use the way of peace, negotiation, and by talking and compromising, you find solution of world problems, and not by armies and military and navy and air force and nuclear weapons. These are not the way to bring peace in the world.
What a timely message. It's always a timely message. I wonder how many people are susceptible to the alternative message right now as we see the world gearing up for more and more warlike activity. Such simple and powerful actions you have performed. But again, you were trained to do all of that. You couldn't have become a peace activist just by reading a few books. This is the manual for peace activism. You had to, first of all, be a child monk. You had to be in an ashram. This was all training. So some people believe, like James Hillman, who's a Jungian, he was the disciple of Jung, and he believed that all souls have a code, that they arrive in the world with a complete blueprint for the mission that they have to accomplish, and that the situations of their lives provide everything they need to deliver that.
But many people do not uncode the code.
They do not. They do not uncode the code. Yeah, they don't read it. They don't figure it. Yeah. They block it. Which is in a sense it's the refusal of the mythical hero to go on his journey. You really went on the journey. You really walked your talk. You delivered the tea, and after that, as I remember, you got a lot of attention, global attention, and you ended up settling in the United Kingdom. Tell us what happened from then.
So from then, I returned back to India via Japan. I walked also in Japan from Tokyo to Hiroshima, because Hiroshima being the first and hopefully the last victim of the nuclear weapon. And so we made a pilgrimage to Hiroshima. And then with the with the courtesy of Japanese pacifists and peace activists, we got a passage from Japan to India. So we came back to India, and then I wrote a book about my journey around the world, and I gave a lecture tour in India talking about peace, about world situation and world affairs, and disarmament, nuclear disarmament in particular, but disarmament in general. Then I was also invited to teach non-violence in England.
That's how it started.
That's how I started. I was invited by a canon of St. Paul's Cathedral in London called Canon Collins, John Collins, and he was saying that world needs to learn non-violence. Non-violence cannot be just done without properly learning. So he invited me to teach and speak and write about non-violence and be in Britain. And this is how I came. And then I also met E.F. Schumacher. And E.F. Schumacher was editor, one of the editors of Resurgence magazine. And at that time, they were looking for an editor. And I was here in England for a while, short while. It was not my plan to be here forever. I said to Canon Collins that I'll come for a little while and I will teach and so on. But I was in England for a while, short while. So, but E.F. Schumacher said to me that since you have so much experience and commitment to peace and to ecology, to environment, to social justice, to spiritual values, all the things are just right for Resurgence editor. And therefore, I would like you to become the editor. So it was a kind of offer of a job. Now, but I didn't want to take it up. I said to Mr. Schumacher that I have to go back to India. He said, why do you want to go back to India? I said, I'm a member of a Gandhian movement, so I want to work with the Gandhians, and therefore my calling is to go back to India. He said, look, Satish, there are many Gandhians in India. We need one in England. Stay here, become the editor of Resurgence, and make Resurgence a Gandhian magazine.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's how it started. I hadn't heard that part of the story. Yeah. I see.
That's how it started. And so he was very persuasive. And I said to him, all right, you sound very persuasive. I'll make Resurgence a Gandhian magazine. But I want you to promise that you will write and contribute an article in every issue.
Good one.
That's the deal.
That's a good deal.
And he said, all right, if you become the editor, I will contribute an article in every single issue. And so we made the deal, and he was very good, became very good friend, and he was a wonderful man. We really gelled together. Our chemistry just met. And so I liked him, he liked me, and so we decided to remain and stay in England and become the editor of Resurgence and work with E.F. Schumacher. And he has so much influence on me that when I wanted to start a college for ecology, spirituality, and holistic learning, I called it Schumacher College.
Which is where we are right now.
Yeah.
So your second life is now in full swing. You've come to the United Kingdom. You've got a wonderful job as editor of what will become a Gandhian magazine, now known as Resurgence, which recently celebrated its 50th anniversary, as I remember.
Yeah.
And you are single. Somehow in this interim, you have mastered the English language, which in itself is an astonishing feat.
Yeah.
The fact that you can be offered a job like that and English is not your native language,
Yeah.
I mean, for most people it's incomprehensible.
Yeah.
But somehow you've done it. You've got the English language together, but you haven't yet done your householder life, let's call it. So tell me about how you met your wife, became a householder. How did all of this fit into the second part of your life?
Yeah. The second part of life, being editor of Resurgence, being in England, teaching about non-violence, and I started something called London School of Non-Violence.
Oh, I didn't know
in the
that.
crypt of St. Martin in the Fields
Oh.
in Trafalgar Square, with the help of Canon Collins. And so during that time, I met my wife, June. And there was an event, and June was also very much involved in peace and thinking of this kind. And so there was an event where my wife came, and I met her there. And it was such a kind of heart connection, immediate heart connection. You can almost call it love in first sight. And the moment I saw her, I said, this is the person that I want to be with. Very first evening. And so then that relationship developed, and so having resurgence, teaching at teaching at the London School of Nonviolence, and working with the various environmental and social movements, and June was a perfect partner in that. She was not only a kind of becoming a wife, but a real traveling together in the journey of spirit, but also a journey of social and ecological, environmental movement. And so we met in 1971, and we are still together 46 years later. And then June and I edited the magazine together. She was the editor with me. And so my English, I started to learn when I was going around the world, walking. My friend who was with me knew English, so I was learning English. And then when I was in England, I learned English. And when you are in a country and you want to learn, it comes very quickly. Then I was just 6 months in America, so my English became refined. Then I went back to India, and then I started to speak English, Hindi, and so on. So English, I insisted and practiced English day after day during my travel around the world. And so editing the magazine, teaching at London School of Nonviolence, and giving talks about ecology, environment, spirituality, sustainability, social justice, all became part of my remit and part of my life. And so, and Resurgence magazine, when I started, it only had about 500 subscribers. And so, and even those 500 subscribers, some of them were lapsed subscribers, were on the list. So I wrote to everybody and say, now I'm taking up the editorship with the support of E.F. Schumacher. If you resubscribe and pay your due now, you will get in every issue an article by E.F. Schumacher, and you will get editorial by me, and we will make a very good magazine if you support. And to my delight, out of 500, 300 people paid then and there the annual subscription.
Oh,
and with that, we printed 1 issue and 2 issues, and then within 1 year, the 500 subscribers became 1,000. And then it grew and grew and grew. So now we have 7,000 members reading Resurgence. We print 10,000 copies, and we sell in bookshops, and the magazine goes around the world, in Japan, in Australia, in America, in New Zealand, in Africa, in India, in many, many countries, Europe and America, especially Canada. And so magazine has established itself firmly. And now the magazine has also incorporated the ecologist. And so we have ecologist website and ecologist section in the magazine. So magazine is called Resurgence and Ecologist. And then we also organize annual Festival of Wellbeing, monthly talks, Resurgence talks in London. We have annual summer camp. And so we do many educational activities. And within those educational activities is Schumacher College.
I just talked to Phil yesterday about a 4-day event that was held nearby, where members of the health profession, the National Health Service, had got together with other people, and the current situation in the UK, where everything is levels and levels of control, and the National Health Service would be an interesting example, where everybody has to provide data to somebody above them. Everything is minutely controlled, and yet this entire gamut of control and oversight and rules and regulations doesn't do anything at all for people's health. In fact, people's health is obviously getting worse. I came back to the United Kingdom a week ago, and I'm sitting here with an 81-year-old, extremely healthy, vibrant, energetic, creative person. I'm 65. And I'm looking around here, people at the 40s and their 50s are old and dying and decrepit and diseased and deeply depressed. And this is like the thermometer, this is the barometer of everything that is wrong is looking at the people. But you have a beautiful country, we're surrounded with birds and trees and green, and people are miserable. So your message clearly has always been timely, but it's also kind of counterintuitive because you never went through the university, you never went through the school system, you didn't get trained to do one thing in particular, you did everything the wrong way around, and yet you're meeting people like leading theologians and thinkers and philosophers and business people. I know that Schumacher College has the backing of people like Prince Charles, for example. You're associating with really influential and meaningful missioned people, if I could put it that way. And you didn't do any of this elite training to get it. You did so that should inspire people. You don't have to go through this so-called system of success, which results in this. Ecological disaster, disease, death, depression. So I would say now, if we can finish off this interview by moving into the last part of your life, well, sorry, not the last part of your life, the next stage of your life, which is the third stage. I know you did a pilgrimage at the age of 50, in a sense, to open that. You crossed Britain on foot with no money. You were helped all along the way by loyal readers of Resurgence magazine. Tell us now about what happened in that third stage, which you previously described as you're giving back to society, everything that you learned. A lot happened between 50 and 75. Briefly take us through that.
Yes. So during that time, my life has been devoted to the service of humanity. And I do not desire to gain anything, because I say in my gratitude that I have received so much from my ancestors. I received so much from nature. The trees gave me air to breathe and oxygen and take my carbon away. And the sun and the rain and the soil and all my ancestors who have built these beautiful houses and buildings, the architects, and the culture, the poetry, the religion. The list is long. And so my duty, sacred duty, is to give something back as a kind of matter of reciprocity, as a matter of mutuality. Something you receive, something you give. Something you receive, something you give. So this kind of philosophy I'm working on. So in that sense, my walk around Britain was to offer something back. And my walk around other places, like I went to Mount Kailash, I went to Santiago de Compostela, I went to Assisi of St. Francis. So all these pilgrimages are contributing, because I'm a pilgrim. I'm an earth pilgrim, I'm a peace pilgrim. I live like a pilgrim, not like a tourist, but a pilgrim. And the pilgrim goes without expectations, accepting the world as it is and offering something in return. And so my life is a life of fulfillment and celebration of nature, celebration of life. So these last 25 years have been a kind of life of service and life of celebration.
You've done so much. You've traveled a great deal. You've come to Japan on many occasions. You continue to be active now in the fourth stage, because now you're 81. So at this point in your life, looking back on all of the quite astonishing accomplishments, including people should know that the BBC hosted your excellent documentary, Earth Pilgrim, which I believe for them was revolutionary to tackle a subject like spiritual ecology. Your year on Dartmoor was so well filmed. It was a big risk for them, and I remember something like 4 or 5 million people watched that program. You've been invited to speak all over the world. You're still as active as you ever were, but now you're in the 4th stage and you're looking at the world from that position. You've seen a lot of negative consequences of our lack of ability to do exactly what you've been talking about. So that would make some people very bitter. Here I am, I've done all of this incredible work, I've produced this mass of literature and talks and energy, and all of the graduates of Schumacher College around the world, 15,000 of them, all of that has been accomplished. We're not seeing around us anything to suggest that it's having any effect whatsoever. So, but you're not in the least bit embittered by this.
No.
So at this stage in your life, how are you feeling? What do you want to most communicate to people? And where do you see the next few years?
I'm not bitter. And I am a person of hope. Like you need food every day. You need water every day. You need every day breathe air. In the same way, you need hope every day. And during this time, I have contributed, but millions of other people have contributed. Lots of big changes have happened for a positive way. When I was walking, the communist Russia, I had to go through the Berlin Wall, and now all those East European countries and Eurasian countries are free and independent, and Berlin Wall has gone down. When I was walking, there was apartheid, and Nelson Mandela was in prison. And now Nelson Mandela became independent. Nelson Mandela became president, and South Africa became new South Africa as an independent, ending apartheid. When I was walking, people, if I said to people, I'm vegetarian, how to feed me, they won't know.
Of course.
Now, anywhere you go, people are even becoming vegans. Now, when I started editing Researchers magazine, not a single windmill was producing energy in Britain. Not a single solar panel was producing energy, renewable energy in Britain. And now 25% of our energy is coming from solar and wind and renewable sources. Changes have taken place, and we have to take a kind of good feeling about it. We have to take solace from it that change can take place. Big changes have taken. At the time of Mahatma Gandhi, British Empire was so big, the sun never set under the British Empire. Now, where is British Empire? Nowhere. So you always take heart and keep your hope and act, and things do change. And although we have many problems, we have a global warming, we have a climate change, we have a plastic pollution in the oceans, we have resources depleting, we have soil polluted, we have rivers polluted. We have many problems, but we must not think that problems are the only picture. We have a picture of many people engaged in making the world a better place. So that gives me solace, and that gives me hope, and I am not bitter, I'm not disappointed. I keep going until the last breath of my life.
I know that your mother had an extraordinary death. Something that most people cannot even fathom. Tell us how your mother died.
When she was 80 years old, she was extremely frail. Her eyes were so weak that she could hardly see. Her hearing was very weak. She could walk with stick few yards. And so she said, now my body is not good enough. Now I don't want to wait until death comes. I want to walk to death. I want to embrace death. I want to welcome death. I'm not afraid of death. And so there was quite something extraordinary. My father died at age 50 of heart failure. My mother said, I don't want to wait for death to come. I'll go and meet death. So one day, she went to all her family nearby, her sons and daughters and daughter-in-laws and daughters and their husbands and children, and said, goodbye. If I have done anything wrong to you, please forgive me. And I forgive you if you have done anything wrong to me. With that peace in my heart, tomorrow I'll start fasting until I die. So she fasted 35 days unto death. And during that time, there was a great celebration of her life. And all her friends and family and children and grandchildren, everybody coming, sitting there, singing hymns, songs which were favorite of my mother. And the stories which were favorite of my mother, they were all narrating and singing and wishing her good luck in her next life. And that was a wonderful celebration. So she died in a celebratory way. And she said, when I die, please don't cry anybody. No need to cry. I've lived a good life, and death is as good as life. So death is good, life is good. So don't cry. And so that way, I so experienced that you can die without any shock or sorrow or mourning. It was a celebration of life and a celebration of death.
Thank you, Satish. Welcome to Real Rover. I'm your roving host, John Craig. Real Rover へようこそ、クレイグ・ジョンでございます。Introducing you to people you would never have heard of if it wasn't for Real Rover. Here we go.